Welcome back to part 3 of our special report on the U.S. Supreme Court oral arguments for the case President Donald J. Trump versus Federal Reserve Board Governor Lisa Cook. In part 1, we introduced the case, what's at stake for the Fed, and more broadly how this case could impact the independence of the Federal Reserve and the impact on financial markets around the world. In part 2, we explored the arguments made by US Solicitor General D. Sauer as he explained to the court why President Trump should be allowed to fire Lisa Cook for cause due to alleged financial misconduct and fraud as a result of a mortgage application she filed showing she has 2 permanent residences, one in Michigan and the other in Virginia. In part 3, we will explore the arguments made by Lisa Cook's attorney, former U.S. Solicitor General Paul Clement, who served during the administration of former President George W. Bush. We'll also hear the questions and comments posed by the justices of the U.S. Supreme Court. Here now is part 3. Lisa Cook's attorney, former U.S. Solicitor General Paul Clement, started his oral argument at 11:30 a.m. A hush fell over the courtroom for only a moment. As part of his opening comments, Clement argued that the Fed governors can only be fired for cause based on conduct that took place while they were in office, which sparked an animated exchange with Justice Alito. Alito asked what would happen if an official was found before taking office to be praising Hitler or the Klan in a video. He felt that Clement's position could tie the president's hands in situations that might absolutely call for someone to be fired. Clement's response: that is an official that would be impeached in a heartbeat, and that would cause them to resign in half a heartbeat. Justice Gorsuch drew laughter by asking Clement, "What's your backup argument?" By 11:49 a.m., after Clement fielded a series of questions about what kind of hearing an office holder should get, Justice Neil Gorsuch pointed out that the law gives the president the ultimate authority to decide on a firing. Justice Barrett, meanwhile, picked up on Justice Alito's line of questioning. What if someone commits a serious transgression while in office, like domestic violence, that doesn't directly affect their ability to do the job? Barrett seemed skeptical when Clement argued those can't directly be reasons to fire someone. There's nothing the president can do to get rid of someone who does those things in office? Clement maintained his somewhat embattled stance that such cases should be handled through criminal conviction or through impeachment. At 11:53 a.m., well into the hearing, Chief Justice John Roberts asked Clement about Trump's original grounds for firing Cook, that she allegedly committed fraud in 2 mortgage applications. "We think that at most this was an inadvertent mistake," Clement said. "We would have liked to present evidence that would substantiate that." Clement also noted that Sauer, the government's representative, had referred to Cook's apparent mortgage fraud, a sign that it hasn't been proven or been the subject of a hearing. At 12 noon, Justice Brett Kavanaugh said the key question before the court is balancing the independence of the Fed while allowing for removal in cases of serious wrongdoing. Clement argued that in the context of the Fed, the balance should tilt in favor of keeping an official in place. It's less important that the president have full faith in every single governor, and it's more important that the markets and the public have faith in the independence of the Fed from the president and from Congress, he argued. Several justices have noted the unusual nature of the case before it, which began with a post by Trump on his social media platform, Truth Social, that said he would fire Cook. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson wondered why that notice would be considered sufficient notice. How is it that we can assume that she's on social media? You see, Jackson was very skeptical of Trump firing people via social media posts. Clement responded by saying that the real defect, in his view, is that Trump's notice prejudged the outcome of her case. So let's recap what we've learned. The United States Supreme Court seems inclined to reject President Donald Trump's effort to immediately oust Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook after hearing arguments Wednesday. A decision is expected before the end of the court's term in June. It's a politically charged case with the independence of the nation's central bank at stake. Trump has been highly critical of what he sees as the slow pace of interest rate reductions by the Federal Reserve under the leadership of Chairman Jerome Powell. Both Cook and Powell attended today's arguments. The case has broad implications for financial markets. Donald Trump announced in late August that he was firing Cook based on allegations that she committed mortgage fraud, which she denies. No president has fired a sitting governor in the Fed's 112-year history. Trump's bid to remove Cook has left the conservative-led Supreme Court in a familiar position, weighing an emergency appeal from the president's lawyers, this time in a case with broad implications for the financial markets and the U.S. economy. Trump's campaign to unseat Cook marks an unprecedented bid to reshape the Fed board, which was designed to be largely independent from day-to-day politics. That way, it can take unpopular steps to fight inflation, like raising interest rates. If enabled by the justices, Trump could replace her with his own appointee and gain a majority on the Fed's board. Trump isn't asserting that he can fire Fed governors at will, but that Cook misrepresented her residences to obtain a lower mortgage rate. A lower court ruled that the administration hadn't satisfied a legal requirement that Fed governors can only be fired for cause, which it said was limited to misconduct while in office. Trump's critics say his true aim is control over U.S. interest rate policy based on his expressed desire for interest rates to drop sharply, so Americans and the government can borrow more cheaply. So what could the court decide? Most of the court sounded reluctant to allow Cook's ousting, at least while her legal case proceeds. While her lawyer faced a series of questions about how far his argument goes, the justices, including key conservatives like Brett Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, and Chief Justice John Roberts, displayed greater skepticism during the Trump administration's arguments. The court has previously sent signals that it is approaching the independence of the nation's central bank cautiously, calling the Fed a, quote, uniquely structured quasi-private entity, end quote. So what about Justice Elena Kagan? She was relatively quiet today. While the Associated Press didn't note any particular questions or comments from Justice Kagan today from the bench, she did write a dissenting opinion in May 2025 that sends a clear signal as to how she will likely side. In that opinion regarding the National Labor Relations Board, she wrote, "The Federal Reserve's independence rests on the same constitutional and analytic foundations as other historically independent agencies like the National Labor Relations Board, the Federal Trade Commission, and the Federal Communications Commission." The court's two other liberal justices, Sonia Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson, joined her dissent. And now time for a little final commentary. The Trump administration's handling of both Lisa Cook and Fed Chair Jerome Powell has raised alarm among former Fed officials and Trump critics who say the Federal Reserve must maintain its independence to be effective, and they fear it could be directly controlled by the White House. We are in an unprecedented moment right now. President Donald Trump is doing everything he can to take over America's central bank so that it works for him, along with his billionaire friends. Senator Elizabeth Warren, the Democrat from Massachusetts, told reporters last week. While Warren has been a critic of Fed policies that she sees as favoring Wall Street and big banks, she added, "I think we can all agree that the Fed works best when its decisions are based on data." Economists warn that lower rates in the short term to achieve Trump's political goals could have negative long-term consequences. This concludes our report. Until the U.S. Supreme Court issues a ruling on whether Lisa Cook maintains her job, the Federal Reserve will remain under attack by the Trump administration. Fed Chair Jerome Powell will be publicly pushed and persuaded to lower interest rates, regardless of the impact that they may have on the economy. The independence of the Federal Reserve determines whether the whims of politicians alike will influence financial markets more directly for decades to come. From the Pep Radio Newsroom, I'm David Moore. Thank you for joining us. Coming up at 2, we have the Coffee Clutch with Robert Wright. Stick around for more music just ahead on Pep Radio.